Some places don't stay haunted because of ghosts. They stay haunted because something is still waiting. Evelyn Hart learned that the winter she stopped sleeping. Every night at exactly 2:13 a.m., the river behind her cabin whispered her name. Soft at first, barely louder than the wind moving through the pine trees. Then louder each night after that. Closer, more human, more patient. Black Hollow was the kind of town people forgot existed. One gas station, one diner, endless woods stretching for miles beneath cold Oregon skies. Most people left before they turned 30. Evelyn never did. At 35, she worked the closing shift at Marlowe's Diner 6 nights a week, surviving on burnt coffee, aching feet, and silence. Silence had become easier than people, easier than memories, easier than explaining why she lived alone in a cabin at the edge of the forest where nobody else would stay longer than a weekend. The locals blamed the river. They said strange things happened near the water after midnight. Hunters disappeared. Compasses stopped working. Animals refused to cross the old bridge. Evelyn ignored the stories for years, until the whisper started saying her name. Evelyn. The sound came again outside her bedroom window just after 2 a.m. She sat upright instantly, heart pounding hard enough to hurt. Rain hammered the roof. Branches scraped against the cabin walls like fingernails. Then silence. Complete silence. Even the wind stopped. Her breath caught. The river had gone quiet. That was worse. Slowly, Evelyn pulled on her coat and stepped outside barefoot onto the freezing porch. The forest stood motionless beneath the moonlight. Pine trees stretched toward the clouds like black skeletal hands. Fog drifted low across the ground. And somewhere beyond the trees, she heard water moving again. She should have gone back inside, locked the door, pretended none of this was real. Instead, she grabbed the lantern hanging beside the porch and followed the sound into the woods. The farther she walked, the colder the air became. Not winter cold. Something older. Heavy. Like the forest itself was holding its breath. Then she saw him. A man stood in the center of the river beneath the silver moonlight, completely still as dark water curled around his waist. Long black hair brushed his shoulders. His pale face looked carved from marble. And his eyes. God. His eyes glowed faint crimson in the darkness. Evelyn froze on the riverbank. Because beneath him, the water reflected the moon, the trees, the sky, everything except him. Evelyn could not breathe. The lantern trembled violently in her hand, casting broken gold light across the riverbank. But the man in the water never moved. He simply watched her. Pale face, crimson eyes, completely motionless beneath the moonlight like something carved from the night itself. Then he stepped forward. The river did not splash around him. It bent. Water curled away from his legs as though the current feared touching him. Evelyn stumbled backward instantly, her boots slipping against the wet rocks. "Stay back," she whispered, though her voice barely worked. The stranger tilted his head slightly, confused, curious, like he had not heard another human voice in years. "You can hear it too," he said softly. His voice rolled through the darkness like distant thunder. Deep, ancient, wrong somehow. Evelyn's pulse hammered harder. "Hear what?" she managed. His eyes shifted toward the river behind him. The river calling your name. Cold rushed through her body. Nobody knew about the whispers. Nobody. Evelyn tightened her grip on the lantern. "Who are you?" For the first time, emotion flickered across his face. Sadness. Brief and sharp like lightning behind storm clouds. A man who should have stayed buried. The forest suddenly groaned around them. Branches creaked overhead, though there was no wind. Evelyn looked toward the trees and froze. Figures stood between the pines. Tall shapes hidden in darkness. Watching silently with silver eyes that reflected the moonlight. One step, then another. They moved too smoothly to be human. Her stomach dropped. The stranger noticed her fear immediately. "Do not run," he said. "They will chase you." Evelyn's breath caught. "Who are they?" The man slowly walked toward the riverbank, black water sliding from his long coat without leaving a single mark behind. Up, close, he looked even less human. His skin was almost white beneath the moonlight. Faint crimson veins glowed beneath his throat, and burned into his right cheek was a crescent-shaped mark dark as ink. "They serve the crown," he said quietly. "And tonight they finally found you." One of the figures stepped from the trees. A woman dressed entirely in black lowered her hood, revealing silver eyes and unnaturally pale skin. "My king," she said carefully. The council warned this would happen. Evelyn stared at the stranger in horror. King. The word echoed inside her skull louder than the river itself. The man looked at her again, and somehow his expression became even darker. Evelyn, he said softly, you should not have followed the voice into my forest. Then pain exploded through her hand. She gasped and dropped the lantern into the dirt as a burning crescent-shaped mark slowly appeared beneath the skin of her wrist. Evelyn dropped to her knees beside the fallen lantern, clutching her wrist as the burning mark spread beneath her skin like living fire. The crescent symbol glowed faint crimson against her pale hand, pulsing slowly with her heartbeat. No, this was impossible. She stumbled backward through the wet dirt, staring at the mark in disbelief while cold panic flooded her chest. The woman with silver eyes stepped closer from the trees, her black coat drifting behind her like smoke. The bond awakened, she whispered. After all these centuries. Evelyn looked at the stranger standing beside the river. The king. Rain slid down his pale face, but his crimson eyes never left hers. He looked horrified. Not angry, not surprised. Horrified. Remove it, Evelyn said shakily. Whatever this is, make it stop. The silver-eyed woman lowered her gaze immediately, as if afraid to speak. But the king answered softly. I cannot. The forest suddenly trembled around them. A deep sound rolled beneath the ground like distant thunder. Evelyn felt it in her ribs before she heard it. The river behind him began moving unnaturally fast, dark water twisting in violent circles beneath the moonlight. Her pulse quickened. What is happening? She whispered. The king stepped toward her carefully, moving with impossible grace over the soaked riverbank. The forest knows your blood now, he said. And once it knows you, it never forgets. Evelyn shook her head hard. I do not understand any of this. You were never supposed to come here. His voice lowered further. Sadness shadowed every word. But the river called you anyway. Another sharp pulse shot through the mark on her wrist. Evelyn gasped as strange images flashed through her mind. Stone halls lit by candles. Crimson robes. A massive castle hidden beneath snow. Then a pair of glowing red eyes staring at her through darkness. She nearly collapsed from the force of it. The king caught her before she hit the ground. His hands were freezing cold. Evelyn froze instantly beneath his touch because the moment his fingers brushed her skin, the pain vanished completely. Silence swallowed the forest again. Even the river calmed. The king stared down at her wrist, jaw tightening as the crescent mark dimmed beneath his hand. Impossible, the silver-eyed woman breathed behind them. Evelyn slowly looked up at him. Up close, he looked beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. Ancient, like something the world should have forgotten long ago. Who are you? She whispered again. This time he answered. Lucien Vale. The name settled heavily into the darkness around them. The silver-eyed woman immediately bowed her head lower. The last vampire king. Evelyn's blood turned cold, because she had heard that name before. Not from the town, not from stories, but in her dreams. Evelyn could not stop staring at him after that. Lucien Vale. The name echoed through her mind with strange familiarity, pulling at memories she could not fully reach. Rain continued falling around them in silver sheets, but somehow none of it touched him anymore. The water curved away from his body, as if the storm itself obeyed him. Evelyn slowly stepped back from his frozen hand. I know your name, she whispered. Lucien's expression darkened instantly. That is not possible. I heard it before. Her voice trembled. In dreams. The silver-eyed woman standing near the trees stiffened visibly. Lucien did not move, but something dangerous shifted in his crimson gaze. Tell me exactly what you saw. Evelyn swallowed hard. Her pulse still raced beneath the glowing mark on her wrist. A castle, she said quietly. Black stone covered in snow. Candles everywhere. And someone calling your name from behind a locked door. Lucien's face lost what little color remained in it. Silence crashed over the riverbank again. Even the shadows between the trees seemed to pull closer. The silver-eyed woman finally spoke. My king, she remembers. Lucien turned toward her sharply. No human remembers that place. But she does. Evelyn looked between them, panic tightening in her chest again. What are you talking about? Nobody answered immediately. Lucien stared at her like he was trying to solve something impossible. Then his eyes lowered slowly toward the crescent mark burning faintly beneath her skin. How long have you lived in Black Hollow? He asked. Since I was 12. And before that? Evelyn hesitated. Strange dizziness washed over her suddenly. I do not know. Lucien's gaze sharpened. You do not know? She pressed trembling fingers against her temple. I remember my mother dying when I was young. After that, nothing feels clear. Another flash exploded through her mind without warning. Snow falling outside a castle window. A woman singing softly in another language. Crimson eyes glowing in candlelight. Evelyn gasped and nearly lost her balance again. Lucien caught her instantly before she fell. The moment his hand touched her shoulder, the vision stopped. Both of them froze. Because this time the crescent mark on his cheek began glowing too. Bright crimson beneath the storm. The silver-eyed woman stepped backward in visible fear. The bond is stabilizing, she whispered. It should not be possible after 400 years. Evelyn looked up at Lucien in confusion. He stared down at her like he was seeing a ghost. Then somewhere deep within the forest, a horn echoed through the darkness. Lo! Ancient! Warning! Every figure hidden among the trees immediately turned toward the sound. Lucien's entire expression hardened. They found us sooner than I thought. Evelyn's heartbeat quickened. Who found us? Lucien slowly looked toward the forest beyond the river. His crimson eyes dimmed into something colder. Older. The ones who buried my kingdom. The second horn echoed louder through the forest, shaking the air like thunder beneath the trees. Every shadow around the river immediately moved. Pale figures stepped silently between the pines, their dark coats drifting through the fog with unnatural speed. Evelyn's pulse spiked. There were too many of them now. Silver eyes glimmered everywhere she looked. Watching. Waiting. Lucien slowly released her shoulder and turned toward the woods. The softness that had briefly touched his face disappeared completely. What remained looked ancient. Cold. Royal. Celine, he said quietly to the silver-eyed woman. Take her across the river. Evelyn stared at him. What about you? His crimson eyes shifted toward her again, and for a moment she saw exhaustion buried deep beneath them. The kind that came from carrying centuries alone. They are not here for you yet, he said softly. They came for me. The word yet settled heavily in her chest. Another figure emerged from the darkness ahead, taller than the others, dressed in a charcoal coat lined with silver stitching that gleamed beneath the rain. Unlike the others, his eyes were gold instead of silver. Old gold, sharp and emotionless. He stopped at the edge of the river and bowed his head slightly toward Lucien. Your Majesty, he said calmly. The council requests your return. Lucien did not move. The council buried me 400 years ago, and yet you survived. The man's gaze shifted slowly toward Evelyn. The moment his eyes landed on the glowing mark on her wrist, his expression changed. Not surprise. Fear. Genuine fear. Impossible, he whispered. Celine immediately stepped in front of Evelyn protectively. Do not look at her. The golden-eyed man ignored her completely. The hollow bond awakened. The forest grew colder instantly. Evelyn could see her own breath now drifting pale into the darkness. Someone needs to explain what is happening, she said shakily. Nobody answered. Lucien's jaw tightened as the mark on his cheek faintly glowed. Beneath the rain again, the golden-eyed man slowly lifted his eyes toward him. You know what this means. Lucien's voice dropped lower than the river itself. I know exactly what it means. Silence swallowed the forest once more. Then Evelyn heard it. Footsteps behind her. Soft. Slow. She turned sharply toward the trees across the river and froze. A woman stood between the pines wearing a long white dress untouched by rain or mud. Her dark hair hung past her waist. Her face remained hidden beneath the fog, but Evelyn instantly recognized her somehow. The sight punched the breath from her lungs. Because she had seen that woman before too. In dreams. In mirrors. Standing at the end of endless castle hallways. The woman slowly raised one pale hand toward Evelyn. Then she whispered a single sentence that nobody else seemed able to hear. You were never supposed to remember me. Evelyn could not look away from the woman in white. The fog curled around her motionless figure while rain passed through the trees without touching her dress. Everything about her felt unreal. Ancient. Familiar in the worst possible way. Who is she? Evelyn whispered. No one answered immediately. Lucien stared across the river with an expression colder than death itself. The golden-eyed man lowered his head slowly, almost respectfully. Even Celine stepped backward in visible unease. Then the woman smiled faintly from the shadows. Evelyn's stomach dropped because the smile looked exactly like hers. Same shape, same softness, like staring into a reflection distorted by time. No, Evelyn whispered under her breath. The crescent mark on her wrist suddenly flared with burning heat again. Instantly, another memory crashed into her mind. She stood inside a candlelit room wearing a dark velvet gown she had never owned. Snow drifted beyond tall castle windows. Someone behind her whispered softly against her ear, "You promised you would never leave me." Evelyn gasped sharply as the vision vanished. Her knees nearly gave out. Lucien caught her before she fell again, his freezing hands steady against her arms. "Do not listen to her," he said quietly. "She is not truly there." Evelyn stared up at him, breathing hard. "Then why do I know her face?" Lucien's jaw tightened. For the first time since she met him, he looked afraid. Not for himself, for her. The woman across the river slowly began walking deeper into the fog, disappearing between the trees one silent step at a time. But before vanishing completely, she turned back toward Evelyn one last time. "He buried me beneath this forest," she whispered softly. "And now he buried you with me." Then she disappeared. The silence afterward felt unbearable. Evelyn looked at Lucien immediately. "What does that mean?" The golden-eyed man answered before Lucien could speak. "It means the dead queen has awakened." Lucien's crimson eyes flashed dangerously toward him. "Enough. She deserves the truth." The man stepped closer to the riverbank, his gold eyes fixed on Evelyn now. 400 years ago, this forest belonged to a kingdom hidden from the human world. A kingdom ruled by Lucien Vale and his queen. Evelyn's pulse quickened painfully. Somewhere deep inside her, the name already felt familiar before he even said it. Her name was Evelyn too. Cold rushed through her entire body. Lucien closed his eyes briefly, like the words themselves wounded him. "She died the night our kingdom fell." The golden-eyed man continued quietly. "And according to every ancient law we possess, dead queens do not return." The mark on Evelyn's wrist pulsed again. Slow. Alive. Then a voice whispered directly beside her ear from the empty darkness. "But I did." Evelyn stepped away from Lucien so quickly she nearly slipped on the soaked riverbank. Her breathing turned uneven as the whisper echoed through her mind again. "But I did." The voice had not come from the forest this time. It had come from inside her head. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. No one answered immediately. The rain had finally begun to fade, leaving only drifting fog and the sound of the river moving slowly beneath the moonlight. Lucien watched her carefully, his crimson eyes filled with something dangerously close to grief. "You are remembering," he said quietly. Evelyn shook her head hard. "Those memories are not mine." "No," Lucien answered softly. "But they belong to someone who once carried your soul." Cold rushed through her chest. The words felt impossible. Wrong. And yet some hidden part of her already feared they were true. The golden-eyed man looked toward Lucien again. "The council cannot allow this to continue." Lucien's expression darkened instantly. "The council lost the right to decide her fate centuries ago." "This is no longer about fate," the man replied calmly. "If the queen fully awakens, the old kingdom awakens with her." Celine moved closer to Evelyn protectively, while the others remained silent among the trees. Nobody looked calm anymore. Fear drifted through the forest heavier than the fog itself. Evelyn pressed trembling fingers against her temple again. More flashes kept slipping into her mind now. A throne room lit by crimson candles. Silver goblets filled with dark wine. Lucien standing beside her beneath black marble arches while snow fell beyond enormous windows. She could almost feel his hand against hers. Almost hear his voice whispering promises she could not fully remember. Then another image appeared suddenly. Fire swallowing the castle towers beneath a blood-red moon. Evelyn gasped sharply and stumbled backward. "I saw the castle burn." Lucien froze completely. The pain that crossed his face lasted only a second, but it felt older than time itself. "Enough," he said quietly. "She cannot carry all of it at once." Evelyn looked up at him, shaken. "What happened that night?" Lucien did not answer immediately. His gaze drifted toward the black river beside them instead. "I failed my kingdom," he finally said. "And I failed her most of all." The crescent mark on Evelyn's wrist suddenly pulsed brighter than before. Instantly, the river behind Lucien began moving unnaturally fast again. Dark water spiraled beneath the moonlight while the forest trembled around them. Every vampire in the trees stiffened at once. Celine's silver eyes widened in horror. "My king," she whispered. "The gates are opening." Evelyn frowned. "What gates?" But before anyone could answer, the river split apart down the center. And beneath the black water, ancient stone stairs slowly began rising from the depths. Evelyn stared at the river in disbelief as the water continued separating down the center like invisible hands were pulling it apart. Ancient stone stairs emerged slowly from beneath the black current, each step covered in silver symbols glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. Cold air rushed upward from below carrying the scent of rain, ash, and something impossibly old. The forest went completely silent. Even the river itself seemed afraid now. "That should not be happening," Celine whispered beside her. Lucien's crimson eyes never left the opening beneath the water. His expression had become unreadable again, carved from the same cold darkness surrounding them. "The kingdom is waking," the golden-eyed man said quietly. "After 4 centuries." Evelyn looked at the staircase descending into darkness beneath the river and felt something shift painfully inside her chest. Not fear. Recognition. She knew those stairs. Somehow she knew exactly where they led. Another memory flashed violently through her mind. Candles stretching endlessly through underground halls. Black marble floors reflecting crimson light. Her own footsteps echoing beside Lucien's as distant music drifted through the castle walls. Then a voice whispered softly beside her ear. "Welcome home, my queen." Evelyn staggered backward instantly. "Stop calling me that." Her voice cracked harder than she expected. "I am not her." Lucien turned toward her immediately. For the first time since meeting him, the cold king disappeared completely. What remained looked exhausted, broken in ways centuries could not heal. "I know," he said quietly, "but the kingdom may not." The mark on Evelyn's wrist burned brighter again, and suddenly the glowing symbols carved into the stone stairs lit up one by one beneath the water. The vampires hidden among the trees immediately lowered their heads in silence. Every single one except Lucien. Evelyn noticed it instantly. "They are bowing," she whispered. Celine's silver eyes shifted toward her carefully. "Not to him." Cold rushed through Evelyn's body. "No." The golden-eyed man stepped closer to the riverbank, his expression grim. "The throne remembers your soul, even if your mind does not." Evelyn shook her head violently. "You are wrong." "Am I?" he asked softly. "Then why did the gates open only after your blood touched the river?" She could not answer. Because deep down, part of her already feared the truth. Lucien suddenly stepped in front of her, blocking the staircase from view completely. "Nobody enters the kingdom tonight." His voice carried through the forest like a command carved in stone. "Seal the gates again." The golden-eyed man looked genuinely shocked. "You would deny her return?" Lucien's crimson eyes darkened dangerously. "I would spare her from becoming what this place turned us into." Evelyn looked up at him in confusion. "What does that mean?" Lucien slowly lowered his gaze toward her, and for the first time, she saw real fear there. Not fear of enemies. Not fear of death. Fear of losing her. Then beneath the river, something ancient moved in the darkness below the stairs, and a woman's voice echoed upward through the water itself. "Lucien, bring her back to me." Evelyn felt the voice inside her bones. Not heard. Felt. The sound rose from beneath the river like something ancient breathing in the dark, wrapping around her heartbeat until she could no longer tell where the whisper ended and her own thoughts began. Lucien stood motionless in front of her, shielding her from the glowing staircase beneath the water, but she could see the tension burning through him now. The cold immortal king looked afraid again. Truly afraid. "Close the gates," he ordered sharply. The vampires surrounding the forest hesitated. None of them moved. The river pulsed brighter beneath the moonlight. Symbols carved into the ancient stone stairs continued glowing one after another, spreading deeper below the water like a path awakening after centuries asleep. Then Evelyn heard footsteps. Slow, soft, coming from beneath the river itself. Her breath caught instantly. Something was climbing the stairs from below. Celine lowered her head in visible panic. "My king," she whispered. "She is crossing the veil." Lucien's crimson eyes darkened violently. "No," another step echoed upward through the water. Evelyn's pulse pounded harder as shadows slowly formed beneath the river surface. A woman's silhouette. Long dark hair drifting around her like smoke beneath black water. And somehow Evelyn already knew exactly who it was before the figure fully appeared. Memories exploded through her mind again, dancing beneath chandeliers of crimson crystal. Lucian placing a silver crown gently against her head while hundreds of voices bowed before them. Then another memory. The same woman standing alone in a burning hallway whispering softly through tears, "If I cannot stay beside you in life, I will return through death." Evelyn gasped sharply as the vision vanished. "She is not me," she whispered desperately. Lucian turned toward her immediately. "Listen to me carefully." His voice softened for the first time all night. "Whatever the kingdom remembers, whatever it tries to make you believe, you are Evelyn Hart." She stared into his crimson eyes, searching for certainty. But beneath the coldness, she saw guilt there. Endless guilt. "What did you do to her?" she whispered. Lucian closed his eyes briefly, as if the question itself wounded him. Before he could answer, the river erupted with silver light. The woman beneath the water opened her eyes. Crimson. Identical to Lucian's. The entire forest bowed instantly. Every vampire dropped their gaze toward the river in absolute silence. Evelyn felt the crescent mark on her wrist burn brighter than ever before. Then the woman beneath the water smiled directly at her. "You already know the truth," she whispered. "Because you were never meant to survive the fire either." Cold terror flooded Evelyn's chest. Another memory surfaced suddenly. Not a dream this time. Real. Flames swallowing castle walls while Lucian screamed her name through collapse.